Fog always did strange things to Hollow Creek. It didn't just hide the mountains, it softened them, blurred the sharp edges into something that looked peaceful from a distance, like a postcard you'd buy in an airport and forget in a drawer. Up close, the fog was different. It clung to porches and power lines. It pooled in ditches like standing water. It muffled footsteps, and it made the town feel like it was holding its breath. Ethan Cole noticed that on his first morning back. He'd parked his old truck near the river pull-off, killed the engine, and just listened. No radios, no commands, no rotor blades in the distance, only the slow churn of water over rocks, and the faint, familiar click of a dog's nails on the floorboard beside him. Rex lifted his head, amber eyes steady, ears angled toward the fog as if it had a voice. "You hear something I don't?" Ethan murmured. Rex didn't bark. He never barked unless it mattered. He just stared. Hollow Creek, Virginia. Population small enough that the cashier at the diner remembered your coffee order after one visit, and big enough that secrets had places to hide. Ethan hadn't come here looking for trouble. He'd come because the VA counselor called it a reset, because the mountains were supposed to be quiet, because the cabin he'd inherited from an uncle he barely knew sat on a ridge where the wind smelled like pine and cold stone, and because Rex needed a place to run without fences. Ethan needed that too. He'd been a soldier most of his adult life. Army, not the kind people put on bumper stickers. The kind that learned to read the air before it broke. The kind that learned that peace wasn't silence. It was the absence of waiting for something to explode. He told himself he could learn that again here. The town didn't agree. They met the first day Ethan walked down Main Street with Rex at his heel. Not in a dramatic way. Not with music in slow motion. Just a moment that felt off. A small building sat near the edge of town, where Main Street bent toward the hills. A hand-painted sign hung over the door. Hollow Creek Animal Care. Dr. Maya Hart, DVM. The clinic was modest, white siding, narrow windows, a single maple tree out front dropping red leaves that stuck to the wet sidewalk. Ethan would have kept walking, but Rex stopped. Not a sit, not a pause, a full stop. His head turned toward the clinic door like he'd been called. Ethan's hand tightened on the leash without thinking. "Rex." The dog didn't move, and then Ethan saw why. A young man stood on the clinic's front step with the relaxed cruelty of someone who'd never been told no and had no intention of learning. He wore a tailored jacket that didn't belong in a mountain town. Expensive shoes, perfect hair. Behind him, two other guys hovered like shadows, lean, bored, trying to look dangerous. In front of them, blocking the door, was a woman, late 20s, maybe early 30s. Brown hair pulled into a messy knot, scrubs under a worn-out flannel. She had that look people got when they'd been tired for too long and decided they were done being polite about it. Her hand rested on the collar of a medium-sized mixed-breed dog, older, gray around the muzzle, trembling but still trying to stand tall. Ethan didn't know her name, but he recognized the posture of someone standing in front of something they loved. "You can't just show up and do this," the woman said, voice tight but steady. The rich kid smiled like the word can't was a joke. "Doc, I'm not showing up. I'm reminding you." "Reminding me of what?" "That my father is done waiting." He nodded toward the clinic. "This place sits on land we need. You sign the sale, you take the money, you walk away. That's how this works." "That's not how it works." Her grip on the dog's collar tightened. "This is a medical facility, and it's my property." The kid's smile didn't change, but his eyes did. A flicker of irritation, a warning flare. "You ever wonder why your suppliers keep forgetting your orders?" he asked casually. "Why the county inspector keeps finding new violations every time he's here?" The woman's jaw clenched. He leaned closer, voice soft enough that it felt private even from across the street. "That's my father being patient." Ethan felt Rex's body tense. The rich kid noticed the older dog at her side. And then he noticed Rex across the street with Ethan. His eyes lit up like he'd found a new toy. "Well, well," he raised his voice. "Doc Hart's got herself a little protection detail." The woman, Doc Hart, didn't turn. She refused to give him the satisfaction. "Leave." He looked at the trembling senior dog. "That thing yours?" "Yes." He made a mocking pout. "Cute. I bet you're one of those pets are family people. Her eyes flashed. Don't. He took one step forward. The older dog let out a nervous bark, more fear than threat. That was all it took. The rich kid moved fast, too fast for someone who was supposed to be just a bully. His foot swung out, a clean, vicious kick aimed at the older dog's ribs. Ethan's body moved before his mind finished processing. He crossed the street in 3 strides, but he was still 2 steps away when something else happened. Rex broke heel, not wild, not uncontrolled. A straight, disciplined explosion of muscle and intent. Rex hit the rich kid from the side, shoulder-checking him like a battering ram. The kid stumbled hard, catching himself on the railing with a startled curse. Rex didn't bite. He didn't need to. He stood between the kid and the trembling dog like a living wall, lips curled back just enough to show teeth. Eyes locked, breath low and steady. The rich kid's face twisted into something ugly. What the? Ethan arrived behind Rex, leash in hand, voice low as gravel. Back away. The kid spun, shocked to find Ethan close. You see what your dog just did? I saw what you tried to do, Ethan said. One of the kid's friends stepped up, puffing his chest. You want to make this a problem, old man? Ethan's eyes slid to him. No anger, no drama, just the cold assessment of someone who'd spent years deciding in seconds who was a threat. The friend stopped moving without realizing why. The rich kid recovered enough to sneer again. You have any idea who I am? Ethan's answer came easy. A guy who kicks old dogs. The woman's breath caught behind them. The kid's cheeks reddened. My father. Tell your father, Ethan said, that if you come back here, it won't be my dog you need to worry about. That was when the woman finally spoke again, voice softer. Please, just go. The rich kid stared at Rex like he wanted to kill him with his eyes. Then he looked at Ethan. And in Ethan's face, he found something he couldn't buy, couldn't threaten, couldn't negotiate with. He pointed at Doc Hart. This isn't over. Then he pointed at Rex. And that dog is going to be a problem for you. He backed off, not because he wanted to, because his pride finally realized it was outmatched in the open. As they walked away, Ethan felt the town watching from behind fogged windows. Nobody stepped out. Nobody said a word. The woman exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. She knelt beside her trembling senior dog, running careful fingers along the ribs, checking for injury. Are you okay? Ethan asked. She looked up, eyes bright with anger and gratitude and exhaustion all tangled together. I think so. Thank you. Rex relaxed a fraction, but he didn't turn his back on the clinic. He kept watching the street. Ethan crouched beside him, scratching behind his ear. Good boy. The woman's gaze flicked between Ethan and Rex. He didn't bite. He didn't need to, Ethan said. A short laugh escaped her, more disbelief than humor. Right. She stood, wiping her hands on her scrubs. I'm Maya Hart. Ethan Cole. Rex leaned forward, sniffing her hand. A gentle lick, approval given without words. Maya's expression softened for a heartbeat. And you're Rex. Ethan watched her, saw the tension in her shoulders, the faint shake in her fingers that she tried to hide. Not fear. Anger. Restrained so tightly it looked like calm. Who was that? Ethan asked, already knowing the answer would be worse than the question. Maya's eyes slid toward the fog at the end of the street where the rich kid had vanished. Bryce Halston. The name landed heavy, like a door closing. Halston, Ethan repeated. Maya nodded once. His father owns half the county. Ethan had heard that kind of sentence in too many places, not just in war zones. In small towns, too. Different flags. Same rot. Maya sighed. Look, thank you for stepping in, but you should know, standing up to them has consequences. Ethan straightened slowly. So does letting them do whatever they want. Maya studied him for a long moment, then glanced down at Rex. They'll come after your dog. Ethan's hand rested on Rex's collar, calm and absolute. They can try. That night, Ethan sat on the porch of the cabin he'd inherited, watching the fog settle into the valley like spilled milk. Rex lay beside him, head on his paws, eyes open. Ethan tried to pretend he didn't feel the old familiar shift inside his chest, the click of something sliding into place, the mission mindset. The part of him that never fully turned off, he didn't want it, but he'd seen that kick, and he'd seen the way the town watched and did nothing. Trouble in small places didn't explode all at once. It seeped. It stained everything. It made good people quiet. Ethan wasn't sure he still knew how to be good, but he knew how to be loud in the right moment. The next morning, Rex woke him before dawn, not with barking, with a low, insistent whine and a paw pressed against Ethan's arm. Ethan sat up, heart already accelerating. "What is it?" Rex's ears were forward, his nose angled toward the window. Ethan listened. At first, nothing. Then, a sound. A faint metallic clink, like glass rolling. Ethan grabbed the flashlight and the old service pistol he kept more out of habit than comfort and moved to the window. Outside, the fog was thick enough to swallow the porch light, but the flashlight beam caught something on the gravel drive, a small object. Ethan stepped out barefoot, cold biting into his skin, Rex at his side like a shadow. He picked it up, a syringe, empty, and beside it, half hidden in wet leaves, a crushed package labeled with veterinary medication. Ethan's stomach tightened. Rex sniffed it, then snarled, quiet, deep, furious. Ethan didn't need to be a vet to know what it meant. Someone had been here, not to scare him, to test him. By the time the sun rose pale and weak over the ridge, Ethan was already on his way back into town. Maya was unlocking the clinic when he arrived. Her eyes were tired, like she hadn't slept. Ethan held up the syringe. Maya's face went still. "Where did you find that?" "On my driveway." Maya stared at it like it was a snake. That's a sedative syringe." Ethan watched her carefully. "For animals? It can be." Her voice was tight. "Or for people, if you're careless or cruel." Ethan felt Rex press against his leg. Maya's gaze flicked to Rex. "They're not just bullying anymore." "No," Ethan said. "They're escalating." Maya swallowed hard. "You should walk away." Ethan's eyes stayed on hers. "Is that what you're going to do?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she unlocked the clinic door and stepped inside, motioning for him to follow. The air smelled like antiseptic and old wood, and something faintly sweet. Treats maybe. Inside, Maya moved like someone who had done everything alone for too long. Efficient, controlled, no wasted motion. She set the syringe down on the counter, then reached under the desk and pulled out a folder. "Do you know why Halston wants this property?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. Maya opened the folder and slid a map across the counter. It wasn't a real estate brochure map. It was something older, hand-drawn lines, county survey markings, faded ink. "There's a spring behind the clinic," Maya said. "An old one, clean water. People used to fill jugs here." Ethan nodded. "I saw it on my walk." Maya tapped the map. "Halston's company is building a wellness resort up on the ridge. Cabins, spa, hiking tours, rich tourists, pretty pictures." She looked up, eyes sharp now. "But the resort's water rights, they need this spring." Ethan's jaw tightened. "So they're trying to force you out." "Yes." Maya's fingers curled into a fist. "But that's not the real reason." She pulled another sheet from the folder. Photographs, not of animals, of barrels. Rusting barrels half buried in dirt behind a chain-link fence. A sign in one photo read, "No trespassing, Halston Quarry. Operations." Maya's voice dropped. 3 months ago, a dog came into my clinic. Stray. Burned paws, chemical sores along his belly. He was dying. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He'd seen chemical burns on skin before. He didn't like remembering where. Maya continued, "I followed where he came from. I found those barrels, and I took pictures." "Illegal dumping," Ethan said. Maya's laugh was bitter. "Worse. The kind of waste that doesn't just make animals sick. It seeps into water. It poisons wells. She stopped, forcing herself to breathe. Ethan looked down at Rex. "And the spring is downhill." Maya nodded. "Exactly." Ethan felt the shape of it forming, an ugly machine with expensive parts, running on intimidation and silence. "And the sheriff?" Ethan asked. Maya's eyes hardened. "Sheriff Lyle Mercer hasn't returned a single one of my calls in months. but he always seems to show up when Bryce Halston is around. Ethan exhaled slowly. He'd hoped this would just be some spoiled kid throwing tantrums. It wasn't. It was organized. And it was protected. Maya's voice went quieter. I sent the photos to the state environmental office. I never heard back. Ethan met her gaze. Maybe they never got them. Maya stared at him. Ethan thought of the syringe, of the fog, of how easily things disappeared in Hollow Creek. Maya whispered, "What do I do?" Ethan didn't answer with comfort. Comfort didn't win against people like Halston. He answered with a plan. First, Ethan said, you stop being alone. Over the next few days, the town tried to pretend nothing was happening. Ethan didn't. He walked Main Street with Rex every morning, not rushing, not hiding. He learned who watched from windows, who looked away, who nodded without speaking. At the diner, an older waitress poured him coffee without asking. Her name tag said, Janine. She leaned in once, voice low. You're the vet's new friend. Ethan didn't correct her. I'm just nearby. Janine's eyes flicked to Rex. That dog yours? Yes, Janine sighed. They'll go after him? They already tried, Ethan said quietly. Janine's face tightened. Mercer won't help you. Ethan stared into his coffee. I'm not planning to ask him. That afternoon, Maya called Ethan in a panic. Ethan arrived at the clinic to find her standing over the older dog from the first day. Bandaged, shaking, eyes glassy. What happened? Ethan asked. Maya's hands were trembling. Someone tossed meat over the fence last night, laced with something. Ethan's blood went cold. Rex let out a low growl that vibrated through the room. Maya swallowed. I found it before Daisy ate more than a bite. I induced vomiting. I think she'll be okay. Ethan stared at the half-eaten meat on a tray like it was evidence at a murder scene. Because it was. They weren't sending messages anymore. They were making attempts. Maya's voice broke. This is my clinic, my responsibility, and they're trying to break you, Ethan said. Maya looked up. Why? Ethan didn't soften it. Because it works, on most people. Maya wiped her face hard, angry at herself for tears. I can't fight them. Ethan's gaze slid to the wall behind the desk, a small framed photo. Maya in graduation robes, a younger man beside her, smiling. Your dad? Ethan asked. Maya nodded. He ran this clinic before me. Ethan pointed gently. Would he sell? Maya's eyes flashed. No. Then you're not going to either, Ethan said. That night, someone broke into the clinic, not through the front, through the back, where the alley was narrow and shadowed, and the fog turned everything into muffled shapes. Maya arrived before dawn, like she always did, and found the back door forced open. Inside, files were scattered, cabinets ripped out. The computer monitor smashed, a gallon jug of something reeking of gasoline dumped across the waiting room floor. And across the wall, in black paint, a message, sign or bury your dead. Maya stood in the doorway, frozen. Ethan found her there 10 minutes later because Rex had dragged him out of the cabin, leash clenched in his teeth like a warning bell. Ethan stepped over the broken glass, eyes scanning, cataloging, not just the damage, the intent. The gasoline wasn't just vandalism. It was a rehearsal. Maya's voice was hollow. They could have burned it down. They wanted you to see it, Ethan said. Maya's hand went to her mouth. I called Mercer. Ethan didn't need to ask how that went. Maya's eyes filled again. He said it looked like a random break-in. He told me I should think carefully about my future. Ethan's jaw tightened so hard it ached. Rex moved through the wreckage, nose low, tail stiff, ears forward. He stopped near the edge of the waiting room. Rex's body went rigid. Then he let out a single bark, sharp, warning. Ethan followed him and saw it. A small smear on the floor near the baseboard, mud, not from the alley, from somewhere else. Thicker, darker, mixed with fine, pale grit. Quarry dirt. Ethan crouched, touched it, rubbed it between his fingers. His eyes lifted to Maya. They came from the quarry. Maya stared. How do you know? Ethan held up his fingers. I've seen this soil before. It's got that crushed limestone grit. Maya's face went tight. You think Bryce? I think Bryce isn't smart enough to plan this, Ethan said. But he's smart enough to follow orders. Maya's voice dropped. His father. Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in months. He made a call, not to law enforcement in Hollow Creek, to someone outside it, a number he'd kept for emergencies, the kind that didn't show up in civilian contacts. When the voice answered, Ethan spoke quietly, carefully. "Agent Kendra Miles?" he asked. A pause, then, "Ethan Cole?" Her voice was older than he remembered, harder, but still steady. "Yeah," Ethan said. "I need a favor." Ethan didn't tell Maya everything about Kendra Miles. He didn't mention the past, didn't mention the places they'd crossed paths that weren't on maps most people used. He only told her this. She works for a federal task force that actually cares when things get buried. Maya gave him a skeptical look. "Federal? In Hollow Creek?" Ethan's expression didn't change. "If the evidence is real, they'll come." Maya's eyes flicked to the photo of the barrels. "It's real." Ethan nodded. "Then we make sure they can't ignore it." The next day, Bryce Halston showed up again. Not at the clinic, at the courthouse. Because if you want to scare someone in a small town, you do it where the walls have portraits of dead judges and people whisper instead of shout. Maya had received a summons, a petition to declare Rex a dangerous animal, based on a complaint that he had attacked Bryce Halston in public. Ethan sat beside Maya in the courtroom, Rex not allowed inside. Maya's hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. The judge was a tired man who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Sheriff Mercer sat in the back, arms crossed, eyes cold. Bryce sat at the front with his lawyer, slick suit, city haircut, smile like oil. Bryce glanced back at Maya and smirked. Ethan watched him the way he watched doorways. The lawyer spoke about public, safety, about aggressive breeds, about vicious attacks, about how Bryce had been traumatized. Maya's jaw shook with restrained fury. Then Mercer stood. He lied with a straight face. He said he'd witnessed Rex lunge. He said Maya had lost control. The judge nodded like this was routine. Ethan waited. When the judge asked if the defense had anything to add, Maya started to speak, but Ethan touched her arm lightly. "I do," Ethan said, standing. The judge blinked. "And you are?" "Ethan Cole," he said. "I was there. Bryce Halston tried to kick her dog. Rex stopped him. No bite, no injury." The lawyer scoffed. "And we're supposed to take your word?" Ethan's eyes stayed on the judge. "No." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "This happened on Main Street," Ethan said, "in front of 3 businesses. One of them has an exterior camera." Maya looked at him, startled. "It does?" Ethan nodded slightly. Because he'd spent the last 2 days walking Main Street, finding the angles, asking quiet questions. Janine at the diner had pointed him to the pawn shop across the street. The pawn shop owner, an old man named Cal, had given Ethan the footage without being asked twice, because Cal had once had a German shepherd too. Ethan played the video. In grainy black and white, Bryce stepped forward. In grainy black and white, Bryce's boot lifted. In grainy black and white, Rex slammed into him before a contact. The courtroom went quiet. Mercer's face hardened, but his eyes flickered. The judge's expression changed, just a little. Annoyance, perhaps, like he didn't enjoy being forced to admit reality. The lawyer tried to recover. "Even if Mr. Halston, the petition is denied," the judge snapped, cutting him off. A breath escaped Maya like she'd been underwater. Bryce's smile vanished, and as the hearing ended, Bryce leaned close to Maya, voice low enough that only she and Ethan could hear. "You think you won something," Bryce whispered. "You just made it worse." Ethan stepped forward, close enough that Bryce smelled the cold in him. "Say it louder," Ethan said calmly, "so the judge can hear." Bryce's eyes flashed with hate. Then he backed off, smile returning in a thin, poisonous line. "See you around." Outside, Maya shook, not from fear, from anger. "They're going to keep coming," she said. Ethan looked toward the fog-covered ridge where the quarry sat, hidden behind pines. "Then we stop reacting. We start moving first." That evening, Rex led them somewhere Maya hadn't been in years. Behind the clinic, past the spring, there was an old stone well half covered in vines. Maya frowned as Rex sniffed around it, then pawed at the weeds like he was digging for something. "What is he doing?" Maya asked. Ethan watched Rex's posture. "He smells something." Maya stepped closer, heart pounding. The well's been dry since I was a kid. Rex pawed again, then barked once, sharp, urgent. Ethan grabbed a shovel from Maya's shed and started clearing the weeds. Under the vines, half buried near the well's stone rim, was a metal box, an old lockbox, rusted at the edges. Maya's breath caught. That's my dad's. Ethan looked at her. You recognize it? She nodded slowly, eyes wide. He used to keep paperwork in it when the clinic flooded once. Ethan tried the latch. It was stuck. Rex whined, pressing closer. Ethan pried it open. Inside, sealed in plastic, was a stack of documents and a small flash drive. Maya stared, stunned. Why would this be here? Ethan's gaze moved to the clinic behind them, to the spring, to the ridge. Because somebody didn't want it found, he said. Maya's hands trembled as she pulled the documents out. They weren't clinic files. They were survey records, water reports, old land agreements, and one handwritten journal, her father's, in his familiar neat script. Maya flipped through, eyes scanning, then stopping, her face drained of color. Ethan watched her carefully. What? Maya swallowed. My dad, he knew. Knew what? She held up a page, finger trembling over a paragraph. Halston Quarry, she whispered. They've been dumping for years. My dad wrote that he confronted Conrad Halston. He wrote that Conrad offered him money. And when my dad refused, the threats started. Maya looked up at Ethan, eyes shining with fury. My dad didn't die from a heart attack. Ethan's stomach turned cold. You think he was... Maya's voice broke. I think they killed him. The fog around them felt thicker suddenly, like it had leaned in closer to listen. Ethan didn't tell her to calm down. He didn't tell her grief made people imagine things. He'd seen too many accidents that were just convenient endings. He looked at the flash drive. What's on that? Maya wiped her eyes hard. We need to find out. They brought the box inside. Ethan didn't use the clinic's computer. It had been smashed for a reason. He used his own laptop from the cabin. Offline, clean, no cloud sync. Maya plugged in the flash drive. A folder appeared. Inside, videos, photos, and scanned reports, barrels, chemical burns, water tests, and one video clip that made Maya's hand fly to her mouth. Her father, older, standing behind the clinic at dusk, speaking into the camera. His voice was calm, but his eyes were worried. If anything happens to me, he said, it's not natural. It's Conrad Halston, and Sheriff Mercer knows. Maya's knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she hit the chair. Rex pressed against her leg, steady and warm. Maya sobbed once, one harsh sound like something tearing. Then she straightened. Her eyes were different now. Not just fear and exhaustion. Purpose. Ethan felt it too. The moment when a person stops hoping the storm will pass and starts learning how to walk through it. They can't bury this, Maya whispered. Ethan's voice was low. They'll try? Maya looked at Rex, then at Ethan. Then we make sure the whole world sees it. The next day, Agent Kendra Miles arrived. No sirens, no flashy badge at the diner. Just a gray SUV with out-of-state plates, parking quietly behind the clinic like any other visitor. Kendra stepped out, mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, eyes that missed nothing. She wore a plain jacket, jeans, boots. The kind of person you wouldn't notice until you did. And then you couldn't stop noticing. Ethan met her at the back door. Kendra's eyes flicked to Rex, then to Ethan. You always did pick the complicated vacations. Ethan didn't smile. It's worse than I thought. Kendra followed him inside. Maya stood, arms crossed, trying to look calm and failing. Kendra introduced herself with a handshake. I'm here because Ethan called. Show me what you have. Maya didn't waste time. She laid out the documents, the videos, the journal. Kendra watched the footage of the barrels, her expression tightening. She listened to Maya's father's recorded message, her jaw setting hard. When the video ended, Kendra exhaled slowly. Okay. Maya's voice shook. Okay, what? Kendra met her gaze. Okay. We open a case. Maya's eyes filled again. You can arrest them? Kendra shook her head slightly. Not yet. Not on this alone. But we can get warrants. We can get soil and water samples. We can tie financials. We can... A crash outside cut her off. All three of them froze. Rex was already moving, head up, ears forward, body tense. Ethan stepped to the window and peered through the blinds. A black truck sat out front. Two men stood near Maya's car. One of them held something in his hand, a bat. The other was Bryce Halston. He smiled up at the clinic like he owned it. Ethan's voice went low. "They're here." Kendra moved toward the door, calm but alert. "Stay inside." Maya's hands shook. "No, this is my clinic." Ethan caught her gaze. "Maya, not alone. Remember?" Outside, Bryce swung the bat once and brought it down on Maya's windshield. Glass shattered. Maya made a sound like she'd been hit. Bryce laughed, loud enough to carry through the fog. Then he lifted the bat again and pointed it at the clinic door like a promise. Ethan felt Rex vibrating beside him, ready. Kendra pulled her badge from her pocket and stepped out first. Her voice carried. "Federal agent, step away from the vehicle." Bryce paused, surprised, not scared. His smile widened. "Well, look at that." He set the bat on his shoulder like he was posing. Didn't think Hollow Creek was worth the federal government's time. Kendra walked closer, phone already recording, voice steady. "You're damaging private property." Bryce leaned in slightly. "You're trespassing on Halston land." Kendra didn't flinch. "This is Dr. Hart's property." Bryce shrugged. "Not for long." One of Bryce's men shifted, hand sliding under his jacket. Ethan saw the movement and stepped out, Rex at his side. Bryce's eyes narrowed at Ethan. "You again?" Ethan's voice was flat. "Walk away." Bryce laughed. "Or what? Your dog tackles me again?" He stepped closer. Too close, trying to provoke. Rex growled, deep and controlled. Kendra's eyes flicked to the man's hand under his jacket. Ethan's hand tightened on Rex's collar, keeping him steady. Bryce smiled like he'd just won something. "There we go. Aggression." Kendra lifted her phone. "Keep talking. I love it when people confess on camera." Bryce's smile flickered. Then suddenly his expression shifted into cold satisfaction. He pointed past Ethan, toward the back of the clinic. "Should have checked your spring," Bryce said softly. Ethan's blood went ice. He didn't understand the words until he heard it. A distant hollow sound, a heavy engine. Behind the clinic. Ethan spun. Through the trees behind the spring, a bulldozer's headlights cut through fog like two eyes. It was moving toward the spring area, fast, brutal, unstoppable. Maya's scream ripped out behind him. "No!" Ethan moved without thinking. He sprinted toward the back, Rex alongside him, Kendra shouting behind. The bulldozer tore through brush, metal treads grinding over wet earth. And behind it, Ethan saw the reason. A crew in hard hats, with Halston Quarry logos, moving like they'd done this before. They weren't here to scare Maya. They were here to destroy evidence, to bury the spring, to bury the well, to bury her father's truth under tons of dirt and machinery. Ethan's mind snapped into a clean, cold clarity. He couldn't stop the bulldozer with his body, but he could stop the man driving it. He ran toward the cabin of the machine, mud spraying, fog swallowing distance. Rex shot ahead, barking now, loud, furious, the sound of an alarm. The driver looked down, startled. Rex leapt, not to bite, but to slam into the sidestep, claws scraping metal, barking in the driver's face through the glass. The driver flinched. That half second was enough. Ethan reached the cabin, grabbed the door handle, yanked, locked. He slammed his fist into the glass. It didn't break. The driver grinned, then reached for a lever. The bulldozer surged forward again, straight toward the spring. Maya was running too, screaming. Kendra was yelling into her phone. Ethan's pulse hammered. Then Rex did something that made Ethan's breath catch. Rex dropped from the cabin step, darted under the machine's side, and emerged with something in his mouth. A thick cable. He'd found the machine's trailing power line, hooked to a portable generator in the brush. Rex jerked hard, teeth locked, body planted. The cable snapped loose. The generator sputtered, died. The bulldozer's headlights flickered. The engine coughed. For a moment, the heavy machine hesitated like a beast losing balance. Ethan seized the opening. He grabbed a rock from the mud, swung, and smashed the side window with everything he had. The glass cracked, then gave. Ethan reached through, grabbed the driver by the collar, and pulled. The driver fought. Then Rex barked in his face again, so close the man recoiled instinctively. Ethan dragged him out and slammed him into the mud. The bulldozer rolled forward another foot, then stopped. Maya collapsed beside the spring, sobbing, cradling the wet earth like it was a living thing. Kendra's voice was sharp as she slapped cuffs on the driver. "You just made this very easy." Behind them, Bryce Halston's truck engine roared. Ethan spun in time to see Bryce peeling away down Main Street, running. Not because he was scared of Ethan, because he'd just realized federal eyes were on him now, and he'd tipped his hand. The town didn't sleep that night, neither did Ethan, neither did Maya, neither did Rex, who paced the clinic like a sentinel, ears twitching at every sound outside. Kendra made calls from inside the clinic, voice low, precise. "I want warrants at first light, soil, water, financials, the quarry, the sheriff's office if we can justify it. Yes, I know the judge is local. That's why we go federal." Maya sat at the desk, staring at her father's journal like it might burst into flames. Ethan stood by the window, watching fog shift. He knew the pattern. When people like Halston lost control of the quiet intimidation, they jumped to something louder, and louder things got people hurt. Just before dawn, Rex froze. Ethan turned instantly. Rex's hackles rose, a sound outside, faint, distant, but real. A vehicle, not on Main Street, on the dirt service road that ran behind the clinic, straight toward the spring. Ethan's voice was barely a breath. "Lights off." Kendra killed the lamp. Maya's eyes widened, fear rising. Ethan motioned her back, then moved to the rear door, silent. He cracked it open and listened. Boots in mud, whispers, metal clinking. Ethan's muscles tightened, old instincts awake. Rex pressed against his leg, vibrating. Ethan saw shapes in the fog, 3 men moving toward the spring with shovels. And something else, a red gas can. Maya's breath caught behind him. Ethan closed the door slowly, quietly. Kendra's voice was low. "Arson." Ethan nodded once. Maya whispered, "They're going to burn it down." Ethan looked at Rex. Rex looked back, no fear, only readiness. Ethan turned to Kendra. "You have backup?" Kendra's eyes stayed on the fog. "Not yet." Ethan's voice went even lower. "Then we don't let them light it." They moved through the clinic like ghosts. Ethan took the side door that led to the alley. Kendra moved to the front to cut off an escape. Maya stayed, inside, against her will, because Ethan told her, "Your job is to survive." Outside, the fog swallowed Ethan immediately. He moved by sound and shape, breath controlled, Rex at his side like a second heartbeat. The men were near the spring now, huddled, unscrewing the gas can. One muttered, "Halston said no witnesses." Ethan's blood went cold. This wasn't just property, this was murder language. Rex growled. One man turned. "Did you hear?" Rex hit him before he finished. Not a bite. A full-body collision that knocked him backward into mud, gas cans spilling. The other 2 spun, one reaching for something at his waist. Ethan moved. He slammed the first man's wrist against the stone wall of the spring enclosure, disarming him with a sharp crack. The second man swung a shovel. Ethan ducked, grabbed the handle, yanked, and drove his shoulder into the man's chest, sending him sprawling. In the fog, a gunshot cracked. Not from the attackers, from the front of the clinic. Kendra. A warning shot into the air. "Federal agent," her voice thundered. "Drop it." The men froze for a split second, then panic took them. They ran. Ethan chased 2 steps, then stopped. Because Rex wasn't chasing. Rex was barking, loud, frantic. At the ground near the spring, Ethan looked down. The spilled gasoline was flowing toward the well area, toward the metal lockbox Maya had uncovered, toward the clinic's foundation. One spark, and it would all go up. Ethan grabbed the gas can, heaved it away, then stomped mud over the spilled fuel, smearing it into wet earth until the scent dulled. Rex kept barking until the danger was gone. When Ethan finally stood, chest heaving, he saw Maya in the doorway, eyes wide. She'd disobeyed. Because courage didn't always look like smart choices. Kendra joined them, breath steady, gun lowered, but ready. Her eyes flicked over the scene, gas can, mud, men's footprints fading into fog. This, Kendra said quietly, is attempted arson, with witnesses, with motive. Maya's voice trembled. Will it be enough? Kendra's eyes were hard. It'll be enough to kick the door down. By noon, the county looked different, not because the fog lifted, because black SUVs rolled in like a tide, federal vehicles, environmental enforcement, investigators, people with clipboards and cameras and sealed evidence bags. They didn't ask Sheriff Mercer for permission. They didn't need it. They went straight to Halston Quarry, and when Mercer tried to block the gate, they handed him a warrant with his name on it too. Maya watched from the clinic porch, Rex beside her, Ethan behind them, both like a quiet anchor. The town gathered across the street, murmuring, faces pale with disbelief. Janine from the diner stood among them, arms crossed, eyes shining. Cal from the pawn shop spat into the dirt and muttered, "About time." And then, through the fog, Conrad Halston's black SUV appeared, escorted by 2 federal vehicles. Conrad was older than Bryce, but his eyes had the same entitlement, just polished, refined, practiced. He stepped out in a tailored coat, looking at the clinic like it was a stain. His gaze landed on Maya. For a moment, the world got quiet. He smiled, not friendly, predatory. "Dr. Hart," he called, "you've caused quite a commotion." Maya stepped forward, hands shaking, then stilling. Ethan's voice was low behind her. "You don't have to do this." Maya swallowed. "Yes, I do." She faced Conrad. "You poisoned my town, you threatened my clinic, and I think you killed my father." Conrad's smile barely changed. "Careful. Accusations can be dangerous." Kendra stepped into view, badge visible. "So can dumping hazardous waste into a watershed." Conrad's eyes flicked to Kendra, measuring. "You're making a mistake." Kendra's expression was ice. "No, you did." A shout erupted down the street. Bryce Halston was being marched out of the sheriff's office in cuffs, face twisted with rage. He saw Maya. He saw Rex. He screamed, That dog attacked me!" Rex didn't flinch. He just stared, calm, unblinking. Because Rex knew something Bryce didn't understand. Truth didn't need to bark. It just needed to stand there long enough for the lies to collapse. Conrad Halston watched his son, then looked back at Maya, smile finally cracking. "You think you've won," Conrad said softly. "But towns like this, they forget. They always forget." Maya's voice was steadier than she felt. "Not this time." Conrad's eyes narrowed. Then he turned away, jaw tight, as agents closed in. As they walked him toward a vehicle, he glanced once, one final look at Ethan. Not at Maya. At Ethan. Like he'd just realized the real problem wasn't the vet. It was the man who didn't belong here, who didn't fear the town's old rules, who couldn't be bought by a handshake and a local favor. Ethan met his gaze without blinking. No threats, no words. Just that quiet promise that some storms didn't pass until they'd taken everything rotten with them. Days later, Hollow Creek's fog felt lighter. Not because the weather changed, because the town's lungs finally did. Maya's clinic reopened with a new computer, a repaired door, and a spring out back now marked with official survey stakes and federal tape. Sheriff Mercer was gone, resigned, arrested, dragged out of office with his reputation collapsing behind him. Halston Quarry sat silent, gates chained, warnings posted, soil teams working like surgeons at a crime scene. People started showing up at the clinic with their animals, and with their voices. A farmer with a limping hound, a kid with a kitten in a shoebox, an old woman with a trembling dachshund, and with each person who stepped inside, Maya's shoulders loosened a little. One evening, as the sun finally broke through the fog and painted the ridge, gold, Maya stood behind the clinic by the spring. Rex splashed through the shallow water like a puppy, tail high, joy exploding out of him as if he'd been holding it in. Ethan watched from the fence line, arms folded, letting the quiet settle. Maya walked up beside him, eyes on Rex. "I keep thinking," she said softly, "if you hadn't been there that first day." Ethan didn't look away from the dog. Rex was there. Maya's smile was small and real. Yeah, he was. She hesitated, then asked, "Are you going to leave?" The question had weight. Ethan had spent years moving from one place to the next, never staying long enough for anything to grow roots. He looked at Rex, who came bounding up with wet paws and a grin that made him look almost ridiculous for such a serious dog. Rex shoved his head into Ethan's hand like a decision. Ethan exhaled, something in his chest unclenching. "I don't know," Ethan said honestly. Maya nodded, like honesty was enough. Then she reached down and scratched Rex behind the ears. Rex leaned into it, eyes half closed, content. And in that quiet, with water running clean behind the clinic and the fog finally lifting in the valley, Ethan realized something he hadn't expected to find in a town like Hollow Creek. Not peace, not yet, but the start of it. A place where the noise in his head didn't have to be the loudest thing. A place where a loyal dog could stand between cruelty and the vulnerable and win. A place where a woman who'd been pushed toward breaking finally stood tall. And maybe a place where a man like Ethan Cole could stop being a ghost. Just as the last light faded, Maya's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at it, then looked up at Ethan, eyes shining. "They confirmed it," she whispered. "My dad's report, it was real. They matched the barrels to the water contamination. They're charging Conrad with federal crimes." Ethan nodded, slow. "Good," Maya swallowed. "And they found something else." Ethan's posture tightened slightly. "What?" Maya's voice was quiet, heavy. "A second site, older, buried deeper. They think it's been there since before I came back to town." Ethan felt the old familiar chill. Because rot didn't grow overnight. It built layers. Maya met his gaze. "I'm scared again." Ethan didn't lie to her. "Me too." Rex stepped between them, pressing his shoulder into Maya's leg, then into Ethan's. A reminder. A promise. Maya exhaled. "But we're not alone." Ethan's hand rested on Rex's head. "No." The fog drifted through the trees, thinner now, like it didn't own the valley anymore. And for the first time since Ethan arrived, Hollow Creek didn't feel like it was holding its breath. It felt like it was finally breathing out.